Folks, today we're going to talk a little bit about your stride, and I'm going to start with an example of running trails. Now, this isn't meant to say that you should or shouldn't be doing trail running. I have nothing against trail running, nor am I trying to necessarily promote it, but it's not uncommon for somebody to be running on the road all the time, and they go out and they run the trails, they go, wow, I feel so much better when I run on trails. Well, there's two reasons why you're feeling better when you run on trails. One is that dirt is softer than what you're probably running on outside. So that softer surface is definitely making a difference. The other thing that's making a difference is, generally speaking, when you run on trails, you're going to shorten your stride a little bit because you don't want to be stepping on rocks, tree limbs, whatever. And that short stride is probably helping you feel a lot better. So let's talk about why that is and what you might want to try and do about your stride when you're running on the roads or other surfaces. So here's a picture of Mev Keflezgi. And if I can hold this straight, as you can see, with his foot there in the front. It's not quite on the ground yet, but by the time it lands on the ground, his body's going to be farther out. He's going to be landing on a fairly soft knee, and his foot is actually landing pretty close to the front of his body. You can see his back leg is way back. That is hip extension that allows that leg to get back. So his stride is coming from behind him, not coming from the front. Let's go to another picture of other. These are more sprinters, which is a little bit different, but I guess it's difficult to get a good picture. You can see here too, not only is their foot going to be landing under their knee, it's almost behind the knee, but sprinting is a little bit different than long distance running. The fact is, that's where we want our foot landing, is under the knee, not in front of the knee. So let's take a look at, you see pictures all the time. You can see this person way out in front of their knee. That's very common. Here's another one. Way out, not quite as far, but you can see they're going to be way out in front of that knee as well. The reality of it is, most recreational runners overstride a little bit, and that is, in fact, a problem. It drives me nuts when you see pictures of people with a stride, and they're saying, yeah, this is how you should be. Actually, they're kind of out far in front. They shouldn't be that way. So why don't you want to do that? So we're going to think about pole vaulting. And here's what happens when you're pole vaulting. So if you're pole vaulting, I have to put this down. Now you're running around. They plant that pole in the ground. So here's what happens when they plant the pole in the ground, because then, of course, after that, you can see they flip themselves up and over using that momentum. The pole hits the ground. That person momentarily, split second, stops. It's a break. Then that momentum flips up and over. The other thing that happens is that pole will have just the tiniest bit of a shudder to it from that sudden stop. Then they flip up and over. The exact thing happens when you are running and your foot is too far out in front. When you hit the ground, you actually stop very momentarily. Your body is going to get a little bit of a shudder, which is eventually going to lead to some type of injury in many cases. And then you have to vault your body up and over your foot, and you're like the pole vaulter over and over and over again. It's a very inefficient way to run. So you've probably heard people talk about your foot strike and heel striking versus midfoot versus running on your toes. Actually, people do all of them. If you went back to that picture of Meb has a slight heel strike, but it's fine because he's landing underneath that soft knee. The reason you typically hear about heel striking being bad is if you are overstriding, you are almost certainly landing on your heel. But the heel isn't the problem. It's the overstride that's the problem, because that stops you, it shudders your body, and you've got to lift yourself over. So what you want is to go backwards here. You want that nice stride that Meb has, where you're landing on that soft knee, just very close to the front of your body. So, okay, how in the world do you do that? Well, one of the things is, I mentioned that Meb had that nice hip extension in the back. A very common reason is because we have tight hip flexors, usually from sitting a lot. So making sure your hip flexors are flexible are really going to help you a lot. There are things to think about. Here are a couple of cues to think about your stride, because if you're able to do it when you ran on the trail, you're able to do it other times. First one is nose before toes. And what that means is your sensation should be when you're running. If you took the tip of your nose and imagined a line going straight down to the ground, your sensation should be that your nose is in front of your toes. Now, that won't actually happen, but that's kind of what it should feel like. If your toes feel like they're out in front of your nose, there's a pretty good chance that you're overstriding. Another thing you do, make sure you're driving your elbows back. You want your elbow to come back with a little bit of snap in it, like you're trying to jab somebody in the ribs, but drive that elbow back. You don't want your hands way forward. You want your elbow back. That can help you a little bit with that. You can also work on increasing your cadence. Now, I'm really cautious when I say that, because so many people have heard, well, I've got to be running 180. I'm not running 180. My cadence is wrong. Cadence is actually a range, and cadence is actually individual to a person, because just because you're not 180, I'm not 180 at a lot of different paces, doesn't mean there's a problem with your cadence. But if your cadence is 150, 155, chances are increasing the cadence will help you a little bit, because running wants to be light and quick. So again, I'm kind of sensitive to that, but don't do that. Other ways, if you really want to know what your stride is like, how can you tell? I would encourage you not to look at pictures in your races. Those pictures are capturing you for 1/1,000,000th of a second. That millionth of a second doesn't necessarily mean how you run all the time. You could have somebody watch you at a track or watch you running, or even better, video you and look at you running over time and look at slow motion to see where your foot is landing. But as I said at the beginning, most recreational runners are overstriding in the front. That's going to lead to increased injury risk, but more importantly, it takes more effort to do that. So think about being quick and light on your feet and try and get that foot a little closer to your body.